It's podcast day on PI Perspectives. Thanks for checking out the latest episode. Today's guest is Tanner Rutledge from Rutledge Investigations in Tennessee. Tanner is the host of the podcast, The Covert Investigator. Today he joins us to discuss child custody investigations. Tanner gives us his take on how to do this type of work and how to get it. This episode is sponsored by Delft Point. Delft Point was founded by investigators with more than 70 years of combined service in the industry. From missing persons cases and custody disputes to insurance investigations and criminal cases, Delft Point's billions of records from all three credit bureaus allows you to develop a complete profile of your subject. Make sure you check out Matt's quick segment hits with Nikki McKinnell-Marler for some great free resources. Now let's check in with the boys for a fresh perspective on child custody cases. Please welcome Tanner Rutledge and our host, private investigator Matt Spare.
And welcome everybody to the next episode of PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spare. I'm your host. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. A lot of people are podcasting these days. There's a lot of content out there. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in and checking this show out. We are back on our regular schedule for this particular program, and I'm really excited to bring in Tanner Rutledge from Tennessee. Tanner, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for joining me. I know you've got a show of your own, the Covert Investigator, and that's how I came across you. Actually, Scott Fulmer had turned me on to your show. I love your program. I think it's fantastic, and I reached out to you and said we should do a show together. So thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
How are things down in Tennessee?
They are starting to slow down with the virus and everything, but we're still getting enough work to stay afloat. That's
good. And your client base, what typically does that look like?
It's a mix of attorneys and private individuals. I do a couple of different things, but I focus mainly in child custody. So I have a lot of attorneys that refer their clients to me instead of hiring me directly.
I've noticed that sometimes too. I get that where an attorney, like they'll get a call from somebody and they're like, either they want like nothing to do with the case and they think it's just easier to dump it on the PI to handle, or they don't want to put the money up front. They're like, yeah, I don't believe in this case enough to spend the money. Here's the PI's number, call him directly. I do get those phone calls every once in a while. I have a very stringent screening process for those calls. 95% of the time I pass. It's good business, I guess, right? There's opportunity there.
It is. I usually end up passing on a lot of them, but there's been some really good cases that have come out of it.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. And one of the things I've noticed on your program, and one of the reasons I really enjoy it, is you really have a strong sales background, and you look to educate the listeners on how to make their business better. I feel like the PI who's listening to the podcast is probably getting it from all different directions. I mean, now's the time to do it anyways. But man, you have like a fresh way of doing it, and I appreciated that you broke it down into a couple different episodes to cover different topics. So tell me a little bit about your background. Like, how'd you get into doing all this?
So I actually went to a high school in Bradley County, and we had a vocational program for criminal justice. And the last semester, they actually started teaching us and showing us a video on private investigations, bail enforcement, and some of the private sector things that we could do with if we went on to college and got a criminal justice degree. And I liked it, and it was kind of in the back of my head. I was going to school at a community college, and I was debating on going through and getting my 4-year degree and trying to go into federal law enforcement or going private sector. And I was working as a bartender at the time, and this woman walked in, and she was talking about a case that she was working. She was a brand new, not a new private investigator, but a new agency owner. And she started talking about a case that she had. We started kind of going back and forth. And I guess I impressed her, and she offered me a job. And I talked to one of my professors about it. He warned me. He's like, private investigators, you kind of have to be careful about who you attach your name to and who you're going to, who you're going to follow around for the next couple of years to learn the business. So I did a background check on her and found her old employer and went and talked to him. I just wanted to find out if she was worth working with, if she was ethical, if she was a good investigator. And he just kind of sat back in his chair and he looks at me and he goes, "You're doing a background check on your employer?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "How old are you?" And I told him I was 19, and he just kind of laughed and said he paid more. So I went to work with him.
That's so awesome, man. It's such a great story. Right? Oh, we're extending you an offer. That's great. I haven't finished my background yet. I'll get back to you. That's so awesome. What did she say when you told her? She scratched her head or what?
No, she just she said, "All right then," and that was the last time I talked to her.
Wow. So did you dig up any dirt on her, or you never got to that point?
Oh no, he said that she was a great investigator, but it was a new agency that had just opened up. I'm not sure if it stayed in business too long, but he had a 40 year background. I think his agency at the time been open for 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I guess that's being in the right place at the right time and contacting the right person to do your due diligence, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
So fantastic, man. And you also have a little side hustle too, which I thought was pretty cool, about the fitness stuff. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I do personal training. I used to do it in person. I did surveillance for so long, and I gained so much weight that I felt awful all the time. So I started doing CrossFit and really got into fitness, and I started competing, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about my body so that I could push harder in the workouts, maybe do better in the competition. And so I got certified as a personal trainer I started learning stuff and went down this rabbit hole and ended up getting certified as a personal trainer through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. Mm-hmm. And then people just started asking me to train them. So I started training them. I started coaching CrossFit at that gym. And then I launched Hurdle Fitness a couple of years ago and have transitioned it to pretty much just online personal training and specializing in tactical athletes, so first responders and private investigators.
Great. It's so genius too, because I think we all suffer from it, like when we get into this business, right? So you're sitting in a car for hours and hours and hours. The only thing to do is just sit around and eat a bag of chips, and I always tell people, like, the dollar menu is not your friend. It's like the worst thing for you. Yeah. And
especially when you start out, if you're a new investigator working for a large national firm and you're on the road so much, they give you like a $25 per diem to cover your food. So dollar menu is really all you can do unless you prep.
Yeah, there was like a Food Network show, like how to eat for a day on $40. I'm sure investigators were watching that show. Oh, that's great though. So, and it's cool that you offer it to PIs because, it's definitely a target audience, right? You can, sit there in your car and maybe do a little bit of exercise if you can, right? Or at least try anyways.
Or when you get to the hotel.
Exactly. Well, right. I remember you talking about something where you preferred to stay in the hotels that actually had gyms, which I thought was really interesting too. So it's good, man. You learn little tricks and tips. So yeah, and you've actually been on a couple of different podcast shows too. Whose shows have you been on?
Yeah, I was on PI Magazine's latest episode. So they've launched a new podcast, which is awesome. Right. And I've also been on Andrew Kidd. He started his podcast back, and we just did that episode yesterday, I think is when it dropped.
Right.
Just going over sales.
Cool. So you're definitely getting your name out there. And I think have you done John Hoda's also or no?
I have not.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, put it on your list.
Yeah.
I know a guy. Oh, that's cool, man. So I think, one of the things that also that attracted me is just the type of business that you do and your knowledge of how to sell it to other people. And we were trying to wrap our head around what type of business to talk about. Cause I always like to try and feature somebody that does something specific, and you do a couple different things, but we're gonna get into it later, talking about child custody cases and what that looks like. How many years experience do you have doing the child custody cases?
That's actually what I started doing. So I've been doing it since 2006, 15 years.
And the firm you worked with when you started, what other type of investigative work did they do?
They primarily did domestic and personal injury plaintiffs. So I got in there, and I basically, when I started, I was that annoying kid. I was 19. I was registered as a PI in Georgia, and I would just Fred was the agency owner and my mentor. I'd just jump in the car with him and bug him and just try to learn all that I could. And then when I started taking cases, I basically got the stuff that was either worked to death or the stuff that other people didn't want to do, which was usually things involving children with drugs or abuse or something like that.
Right. So, hey, that missing persons case, the one that you've been advertising about, has there been any traction or movement on that or nothing?
Very little. Yeah. So that one, Daphne Westbrook, she disappeared in Chattanooga in October of last year. And the mother, she got a message. We're not 100% sure that it was actually from Daphne. It was done through a link to a YouTube channel that was taken down almost immediately after the mother watched the video. But that's the last we've heard from her, if that was her.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, that's a specialized investigative technique. I know a couple guys that do it, but it's tough, man. It's tough because those are ones that it's never good. It never ends well. I mean, very, very, very few times has that happened, and just being able to grieve with somebody as they're going through it, and because you are part of the grieving process for that particular person. It's a challenge, man. I give you credit for doing that type of work. It's not something I've ever actually done.
I've done a couple of those, missing kids and custodial interference. It's something that I've been doing more and more of over the years. It's been kind of my goal to get into that line of work.
Right.
With this particular case, I'm working with Carl Snow of Purple Mountain Investigations out of Texas.
Okay.
He's taken the point on looking at, because he was with a nonprofit and had such a large network of investigators, talking to the family that are out west in California, and some of the leads that we have in Colorado.
Right.
So if you're an investigator in Colorado, on my show, I keep a link to Daphne Westbrook's missing poster. She was walking her dog when she went missing, and we believe the dog is still with her.
Right.
We think that she either ran away because of some things that were happening between the mother and father, or might have followed him out to the Colorado area.
Right. So it's the Covert Investigator, right? That's the name of the show.
Yep.
So we'll have links to everything in the show notes. But folks, definitely, if you're in that Colorado area, please go check it out. Take a look and see if you can help out with this. So, okay, so we're going to jump out and take a quick commercial break. And when we come back in, I do want to talk to you about these child custody cases and just get your take on it, and maybe talk about a couple of interesting cases if you can actually talk about it. I think that would be really cool. So sit tight, everybody. We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by CROSStrax Case Management Software. CROSStrax integrates with programs you already use like QuickBooks, DelvePoint, ScopeNow, Investigation Video Editor, Word, and more. The integrations, combined with powerful features such as automated audio transcription and report generation, help investigators generate revenue and improve efficiency. The system can be customized for any investigative specialty. Now here's Tanner's perspective on CROSStrax.
I love it. It's how I run my business from top to bottom. I even use it as a selling point when I'm talking to attorneys, whether it's a millennial or a baby boomer. They want the initial contact, but after that, the touch switch changed a little bit. So my younger, more tech-savvy attorneys can check their phone and have instant access to their cases. I can send out emails to some of my older clients or people that want that personal touch. And then when I'm talking to the paralegals, depending on how you have it set up, because it's customizable to whatever you do, they can track the case budget, which makes the office manager's job so much easier.
Start your free trial today at CROSStrax.co and use promo code PIP20. Kelmar Global is also a proud sponsor of PI Perspectives. A leader in the industry, Kelmar Global has been successfully conducting all types of investigations for our clients since 1989, specializing in surveillance as well as corporate investigations, insurance fraud, and cases for law firms. Kelmar Global is licensed throughout the U.S. Contact us at kelmarglobal.com. Please reach out to Kelly and his team if you need anything covered throughout the United States.
And welcome back, everybody. We are here on PI Perspectives. This is Matt Sperry, your host. I am here with Tanner Rutledge. Welcome back, Tanner.
Glad to be here.
Okay. All right. So before we stepped out, we started talking a little bit about child custody cases. So explain to me, what exactly is a child custody case and how does that work?
So usually if there's a split in the marriage, or if the couple isn't married and there's a dispute over who is getting custody of the child, whether they're doing 50-50 custody or one parent is wanting full custody for one reason or another, I'm called in to gather evidence to see if the other side is doing anything against the parenting plan or putting the child in danger. There's a number of reasons that I'm called in, but usually it's to help make sure that my client gets the custody that they're seeking in court.
Okay, so your client in this is typically one of the parents, right? Or is an attorney that hires you on behalf of one of the parents?
Usually it's one of the parents, and they've been referred by an attorney.
Okay. All right. So that's one of those situations then, whether you're dealing with them directly. Do you do like retainers on that, or is billable hours? Like, how does that work?
Oh yeah. So I always start with retainer. I'll listen to the case. Some are a little bit more complex than others. I'll let them know what I think it's going to be for the whole of the case, and then I'll either take the full retainer up front, or we'll break it down into budgets, and I'll take a retainer for each point that we're working on the case.
Right. Yeah, that's. I think you almost have to do that, right? Because you just never know what's going to happen when you start digging in on this stuff.
And with any domestic case, always get paid up front.
Yeah, definitely. So how do you start that type of search? So let's say, okay, they've hired you, they've suspected something's going on. Like, now what? What do you do from there?
The first thing I do is I read the parenting plan if they have one. Usually the judge or the courts have ordered, or they've agreed to some sort of plan as to which parent's going to have the child on what days of the week, who's going to be allowed around the child, and if someone of the opposite sex could spend the night or be around the child. So I'll go through and I'll look for points in the parenting plan that are commonly broken. And then I'll look at the known schedule of the person that I'm going to be investigating. Usually these are pretty surveillance heavy. So when I start this investigation, I'm looking at setting up surveillance. And then I'll pick times that they're going to have the child and set up surveillance to follow them and see what's going on.
Yeah, and I would assume you do some sort of social media and open source
absolutely.
Research to get the background, right? Just to build I guess essentially what the character is of this particular individual that you're looking at, right?
Yeah. So all of these cases are going to be going to court. Usually, there's already an open case, so I'll use databases, social media, open source resources, build a background, learn as much as I can about the person, and then since I'm working with someone that knows the individual, I can get additional information about where they like to hang out, hobbies they have, and different points of information that could help me find them if something happens and I lose them while we're doing surveillance.
So when you run your surveillance, is it typically just you, or do you have multiple person teams?
It's usually just me. If it's something that involves narcotics or something where we know the person's going to be a little bit more alert or there's a hard setup, I'll bring in one or two other investigators.
Do you use male and female, or typically just male?
That depends on who's available.
Right.
Usually it's just male.
Gotcha. So how do you source these other investigators? So have you guys met them through networking or another way?
Yeah, so it's usually people that I've met through the state associations. There's been a couple of people that were with the firm that I was with that split off. I have a lot of people that I knew down in Georgia, and then most recently I've started meeting people through my podcast that have been reaching out and asking questions that are actually in this area.
Nice. That's great, man. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know about you, but like when I get messages from people, I want to record like 10 more episodes like the next day. I get so amped, man. I love like the feedback from people. It's great.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Just, and it comes from everywhere too. I get it like LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, like you name it, comes all over the place. So yeah, guys, if you haven't checked out Tanner's program, I definitely recommend it. It's good stuff. It's really, really well produced. It sounds awesome, and the content is really, really good. So
appreciate that.
Yes, and I accept 20s, 50s, and whatever other kind of bills you want to throw my way. So okay, so tell me a situation on a child custody case where it just didn't turn out the way you thought it was going to turn out.
I had, it turned out good for my client, but I was expecting it to take a lot longer. We had a situation a couple of years ago. I was called by this woman. She had made a mistake and had a child, ended up having 2 children with a guy with a known record. He was a drug dealer. He was suspected of cooking meth, and she had supervised visitation already with the father. But she wanted full custody, and she wanted to terminate his parental rights. And I was expecting this to go on for a couple of weeks, just based on his background, the problem that the police in the area had been having getting anything on him. But we went out on a Saturday, and I followed him for about 12 hours downtown I got him buying drugs and drinking alcohol with the children when he was supposed to be doing supervised visitation, and the mother, who was supposed to be the supervisor, basically just leaving him there.
Wow.
With what we got that one day, they ended up terminating his parental rights. So he lost full custody, visitation, everything with the child. There were a couple of other things that we figured out when we were setting up on him. He decided to supplement his drug business with shooting amateur porn.
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So again, didn't want the kids around that, and he was only interested in custody of his 4-year-old daughter.
Oof.
That didn't want anything to do with his son.
Yeah, that's a warning sign.
That's
Wow.
So that he lost rights. It turns out I ended up being involved in that for about 3 or 4 months because him and his new girlfriend. They made runs on my clients. They beat her so bad that they put her in the hospital one night.
Goodness.
Yeah, it was a really ugly case. There were so many things on that case coming out of left field that.
It sounds like an episode of True Detective, man. That's crazy.
It's nuts.
Absolutely nuts.
That's that Southern drama.
Yeah, there you go. Right. This is why you got to get paid up front too. You just never know. Never know how it's going to turn.
Yeah, this is why Justified is set in Kentucky.
Right. How often do you actually have to testify? I mean, you say these are all either go to court or in court already. How often do you find yourself actually called in to testify in a case?
So a few years ago, I testified on almost every case that I did. More and more of them have been going to mediation. So I've not actually had to testify in, I haven't had to testify in 9 months. I think about 30% of the cases I do in child custody actually go to court now.
That's great. You don't have to wear a suit every day, right?
Right.
Fantastic. So, yeah, it's funny as investigators, like some guys freak out about testifying, right? Going to court, they get really nervous and doing everything. Like, I love it. I absolutely love it. That whole dynamic of, the other attorney trying to trip you up or get you to say something wrong. And they ask you the same question like 20 different times the same way. The same question 20 different times. It's always a challenge. How do you feel about getting up on the stand?
I love it. That is one of the best ways to showcase my work product in front of other attorneys.
Right.
So from a sales perspective and from a business standpoint, testifying is great because I don't actually have to talk to or sell anybody anything. They're seeing my work. They're seeing how cool I am under pressure on the stand, and I enjoy it. I enjoy public speaking though.
Yeah, I know us guys that do the podcasting thing. We kind of go down that route, right? We like to talk.
Yep.
It's like just to answer the question, right?
It's like it was a yes or no.
Exactly.
20 minutes.
Yes or no, buddy. It's funny. That may or may not have happened to me once on the stand. That's cool, man. That's really that's really good. So, talk to the new investigator here. Somebody who says, you know what, I feel a passion to do this type of work. It sounds really interesting. This child custody stuff. How does one get into that? How do they decide they want to start doing that type of work?
So when you get into this type of work, and if it's something that you really want to do, network with family law attorneys. So go to your state bar association, download the list of attorneys in your city, and just start building those relationships and talking to those attorneys. Also, go to your state association and seek out other private investigators that specialize in child custody. It's surveillance heavy, and especially the older guys or guys that have been doing it for a while, we get tired of surveillance pretty quick. So jumping in and working subcontract for a domestic investigation firm is a great way to get your feet wet, and you'll learn so much from just doing the surveillance on these cases because it kind of touches everything. You'll learn how to go into bars and how to blend in. That's one thing you're going to have to learn pretty quick, and you'll also learn the best ways to set up to get the evidence that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point. Even investigations in general, when you're starting up, like that whole subcontracting route is really helpful in many different ways, right? Finding that good mentor, gaining the experience you need. And, the downside is you're not going to get your regular hourly, right? You could just throw that out the window. It's not going to happen. You do have to be willing to take a little bit of a cut on your hourly rate, but the benefits are there where if you're working with somebody who has an established contract that's going to have regular work, you may make it up on volume, and you'll get a good reputation as being someone that's they can count on. And these guys all talk too, right? So who do you know is a good sub out there? I got this that needs to get done. I know that's the way it happens in New York, right? On our listservs and things like that. When there's a need for somebody, if you do quality work and you're just responsible about things, you'll definitely get more work.
I mean, it's a great way to learn, especially if you find someone to subcontract for that'll take that mentor role and not necessarily hold your hand, but answer your questions when you have those. So you're not just out there fumbling around trying to figure things out for yourself.
Yeah. And I think speaking to the guys that have been doing this for, 10, 12, 15 years, hire subcontractors and train them. Sometimes it's better to actually, own your business and run your business than be the guy out there in the car doing that stuff. So, making that decision of when to start that transitioning is always a tough one, but you find a good subcontractor, someone who's willing to do it. It could be a win for everybody. How about another? Give me one more if you can. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here.
I had one. This is one that I always end up talking about. Let's see, what year was it? I want to say it was 2013, 2014. It was near when I opened my agency. I got a call, and it was from the grandparents of the child. I normally don't work for grandparents unless they already have an attorney and they've opened a case. But this particular situation just drew me in. One of the reasons that I started doing, other than just out of a necessity to learn how to investigate with the firm that I was at, I always wanted to help children. And in this particular case, when I was called by the grandparents, their daughter had a drug problem and had an infant daughter. And somehow there was a drug dealer, and it was never really clear if she was actually involved with the dealer or if she sold the baby for some heroin.
Oh boy.
Yeah. But it ended up, she ended up with some heroin, and the dealer ended up with her baby. And so I did surveillance for probably about a week on that file, and he would wear the infant on a chest harness,
right?
Walking out to cars when he was doing his deals. I guess his thought was, nobody's going to try anything with me or shoot me if I have a baby strapped to my chest.
Oh man, that's so crazy.
Yeah. That one, I did 2 days of physical surveillance. It was hard to blend in that particular area. So what I ended up doing was doing a drop cam that was camouflaged in a log. So Tennessee, and especially Chattanooga, is this weird mix of metropolitan area and mountains. So this was on the outskirts of the city, right next to a ridge line. So I was able to get a drop camera that could record for, I think I left it out there for, I want to say 4 or 5 days. And it basically just recorded everything for me. Turned that over to the grandparents. They gave it to the attorney, and the grandparents got custody of the grandchild.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah.
That's a Netflix documentary waiting to happen right there.
Right.
That's crazy. You brought up a good point before as far as the networking goes with attorneys, and it's something that I always preach to, right? Finding out where the attorneys hang out, just being a part of the associations they're a part of, any nonprofits that they are affiliated with, supporting that cause, if it's something you can get behind, and showing up to their events, just being present is so important. I know these days nobody's present anywhere, but this too shall pass. And one of the interesting things that's going on with me during this time too is because New York is pretty much it's shut down, and we're shut down until May 1st right now. The attorneys are home. They're not considered essential workers, but they are still working. But they are hawking my social media accounts, man. So I'm a bit of a foodie, right? So I like to cook and stuff. So I figure, all right, if I'm not going to be out in the field, I'm going to start posting my food pictures again, because I used to do it all the time. And I just I stopped because I got busy. And I'm getting all these calls from attorneys like, hey, that looked really good. How did you make that? Can you give me the recipe? And we're actually having conversations about, I'm giving cooking lessons to my clients, and it's how we're killing time, but I'm building relationships with them. And it was funny. One of the guys I talked to, I got a call during this downtime with potentially a new client I was like, oh yeah, I was talking to so-and-so and he was telling me, like, we were talking about the steak that you made or whatever. But I also mentioned I was looking for an investigator and he said, I should use you. So I was like, okay, cool. Maybe I'll get a new client out of this. So it's been a very strange time up here in New York. So
that's great. When you're networking, you never know where the lead's going to come from. I started networking in business networking groups, thinking that I would get more corporate clients, thinking that we have a lot of technology companies here in Chattanooga, right. And there's a lot of Fortune 500s that have like R&D departments or subcontractors that are running things for them. So I figured I'd get more intellectual property work, maybe some internal, external theft stuff. Right. And I ended up getting child custody and domestic work because I just started talking to people, cutting up with people and sharing stories. And everybody either had some sort of crazy domestic drama or knew somebody that had some crazy domestic drama.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. You just never know where it's going to come from. One of the personal injury attorneys that I'm really close with, I actually had him on one of my shows earlier, Leo Vianides. He's always like, when he gets a call that comes in, he's always like so polite to people. Like to me, it's like, it's incredible how polite he is, because it's New York. People aren't polite in New York, but he treats people with kindness, and he really like teaches them why they don't have a case. And he spends way too much time talking to them, in my opinion. But man, it's turned into new cases so many times because they didn't have an accident, but their uncle did, or maybe their cousin wasn't happy with the attorney that they were using and wanted to swap out. So it actually works. He actually gets clients that way, just by taking the time to talk to somebody. But I could learn a lot from him. Try not to, the direct phone calls that I get that I usually turn away. I should probably try and be a little cooler to people. So who knows? But
something I talk about, and I picked it up from the fitness industry. We call it a conversion tool. Right. So for private investigators, our main conversion tool is that conversation that we have. A lot of us call it an intake call. Right. I like to refer to it more as a consultation, because I'm walking people through the process, finding out what the problem is. Sure. And they might call me, and what they're wanting, there's absolutely no way I can do that. It's illegal. It's ridiculous. And their problem isn't their real problem. So I talk to them for a little bit, kind of walk them around the story, and then we identify something that, I can actually help you with that.
Right, you sound like a real regular Tony Roberts, man. Good for you. That's so cool. Although that's really good. All joking aside, it's really cool. Taking the time to do that is good, and it's redeeming, right? You feel better about what you do. I think a lot of times, people out there, like, they have this image of who a PI is and what we do, and there's that stigma, of the drunken retired ex-cop who maybe he got kicked off the force because he punched the chief in the nose, and now he's a PI, and there's that grimy, dirty background. But we're all we're not like that. We're just people just trying to help people find the truth and connect the dots on things. So it's very cool.
And be a hub. I mean, like when you're going out and you're networking, you don't want to always be asking for things. If you can point people toward other resources, right. I tell people when I'm giving my elevator pitch or giving my talk at networking events, if you have a problem and you don't know who else to call me. If I can't help you with it, I'll find somebody that can.
Yeah, that's what I always say when I tell people to call me. Like, if you have any kind of issue, call me, and either I can help you or I know somebody who can. That's always the way I say. And literally, like, doing this podcast, like, now, it's true. I literally know somebody who can. Because I've met so many people that just do different types of investigation than me, and I do get those phone calls all the time. So it's been really neat. So, what's your area of coverage out of Tennessee?
I stick mainly around Chattanooga, but I go up to Knoxville and Nashville quite a bit. Right now I'm working on licensing in Georgia so that I can cover basically southeastern Tennessee and North Georgia.
So how do folks get a hold of you if they were interested in maybe doing the coaching with you, or if they had any questions or anything they wanted to run by you?
Yeah, you can check out my website. It's rutledgepi.com, RUTLEDGEPI.com. You can email me at tanner@rutledgepi.com, TANNER, rutledgepi.com, or call my office, 423-708-3634. Or you can also reach me at the show, Covert Investigator. There's a link in my show notes where people can leave voicemails, questions. If it's something that you just have a question about the industry, feel free to leave a message there. I can do an entire episode about it, or just do an episode where I'm answering questions.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I definitely get my fair share of questions too on LinkedIn. And one of the things I've been doing too is I've been having phone conversations with people, right? So you'll get those questions and I'm like, hey man, do you just want to chat? Like, especially now, like I got some free time, like let's talk a little bit. And there's so many guys that are just like starting up, that are finding our shows and are getting inspired by it or whatever, or just have questions on how to do things, and they're reaching out. And, I love it. I love being a resource. I'll never get tired of talking too much, right?
No, absolutely.
It's good stuff. So, hey, before we wrap it up here, we're neglecting the star of your show though. Detective Baby, man. I love Detective Baby. The first time that happened, like I started laughing. I think it was on a plane flying somewhere. I literally started laughing out loud. Like, this is awesome because, I have many children and I can appreciate that. So I was really impressed by that, man. I thought it was very cool. So
he is learning to walk now. So Detective Baby kind of waddles and holds on to things, and then I'm diving across the kitchen or diving across the room to catch him when I see him starting to fall.
Nice. Well, wait till he gets older. Well, my oldest is obsessed with podcasting, and we have our own show that we do together. So he's really into it. He's a regular broadcaster. So today he wanted to do weather reports. So I actually videotaped him doing like a 3-second or not 3 second, like 18-second weather report. And he wants to do it every day now. I'm like, I got the time. I'm home. No problem. Let's do it. Let's do the weather tomorrow. So the joy of parenthood. So, all right, Tanner, thank you so much. This was really, really great. I was excited to talk to you, and I think you have a lot of really great insight to share. And definitely go check out his podcast, folks. It's worth a listen. Subscribe to it. Give him a rating and a review. It's very, very helpful for us with our numbers and analytics and all that good stuff. So thanks, man. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me today.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
All right. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next episode. Have a good day. Take care.
Thanks for checking out this episode. It's always great to hear podcast worlds collide when two hosts speak about doing business in the industry. We thank Tanner for taking the time to share his perspective with us. We also want to thank CROSStrax, Point and Kelmar Global for sponsoring this show. Please, folks, check out their sites and consider using their services. Make sure you use code PIP20 for additional savings. Next week, Matt welcomes Michael Morelli from Powerhouse Investigations to discuss his take on open source investigations. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you get notifications on Matt's quick hit segments. These segments give you industry updates on COVID shutdowns and issues. Now have a great week, stay safe, and thanks for tuning into PI Perspectives.